Hello, welcome back to another edition of the Faithful Fan Sports Podcast. My name is Noah Casper, and I'm joined today by Luke Cervello. And we're going to spend this entire episode going through an NFL draft preview. Luke, how are you doing today?
Good. How are we doing, listeners? How are we doing?
So, I guess we'll start at the top, obviously, with Arizona. We've had the conversation about Rosen or Murray multiple times on this show before. Luke, do you believe that Murray to Arizona is a done deal?
Yes, I think that they have made up their mind, and right now they're just basically just weighing who they're going to give, where they're going to weigh whose offer they're going to take for Rosen. That's what I think. But also, Noah, so I think that Rosen and gone and Murray's a done deal, but I don't think that's what they should do. I want to make that clear.
Yeah.
I think giving up on a guy you took in the first round who has NFL tools, he's built well for the NFL, he fits a lot of systems, and he was hurt is a mistake. So that's my opinion. He was hurt. Don't forget that, no. He was hurt a lot of that year.
Yeah,
he was. Not right.
And he played under a first-year head coach who was only a head coach for 1 year. My thing with Kyler Murray in Arizona, I agree it's a done deal. I think potentially the most interesting development on draft night will be to see if Rosen actually gets dealt on draft night, which I think
that's possible.
I would say there's a high possibility that happens. If you're like, for example, if you're the Redskins at 15, would you rather spend the 15th pick on Daniel Jones or Drew Lock or on Josh Rosen?
Yeah.
I mean, essentially that ends up being the conversation that has to be had there. I don't think Denver would give up 10 for Rosen. I think most likely the highest that Arizona could get off of Rosen would be 15 with Washington.
Yeah, I agree.
So moving on to number 2, San Francisco. They had an interesting year last year. They had high expectations. And then their 2 big acquisitions in Jimmy Garoppolo and Jerick McKinnon both played a combined 2 games in the regular season. So they're all the way still back at number 2 in the draft. What do you think San Francisco goes with it to? Maybe not a particular person, but what position do you think they will target?
I think to me it's getting Garoppolo weapons. I would say that.
2?
I think their main focus in this draft will be getting Garoppolo weapons, but I don't think there's really a weapon worth drafting at 2. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's more the conversation for the depth rounds, 2, 3, 4.
Yes, I think they should focus those rounds on getting NFL-ready receivers and tight ends. At 2, I think they'll take, I don't know, whoever. Maybe I would go. I would think they would go defensive side of the ball there, but I could be wrong. Maybe I don't think there's an offensive lineman you'd take it 2 either. So I'd probably say, if I had to guess, they'll go defense.
I mean, before Kyler Murray's descendants, a lot of people expected Nick Bosa to be the number 2 pick. The number 1 pick in the draft to Arizona.
Yeah, they'll probably take Bosa, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I would slot Bosa into San Francisco at 2. He's rated as one of the top defensive line prospects in the draft, one of the higher defensive end prospects to enter the league in a couple of years, actually. I don't know that that's necessarily the biggest need for San Francisco, but I think it's a matter of best available player at number 2.
I'll say this about Nick Bosa. I think that Ed Oliver has a higher upside than Bosa, but I think that Bosa is a safer pick. I think he has a better chance to have a productive NFL career, but I think Oliver's ceiling is higher.
I think San Francisco is probably one of the more we want to win now oriented teams to draft number 2 in the draft with their own pick in a long time. I agree with you there. I would say Bosa is more NFL ready right now to contribute in an NFC West with the Rams and the Seahawks than Ed Oliver, Quinnen Williams, or Josh Allen is per se.
Yeah.
So moving on to the Jets at 3. I mean, in my opinion, I think the top 3 are very sort of locked in. I would be very surprised if the top 3 didn't go Murray, Bosa, and then Josh Allen of Kentucky, 3 to the Jets. Be very surprised if that's not how it went at the top.
Tell you, Josh Allen's one of the better stories in the NFL in recent years. Kid that was counted out his whole football career, his whole life. He's going to be a top 5 pick at least, probably top 3 pick in the draft. Pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. The Anthony Barr thing fell through for the Jets. I think Josh Allen is younger, obviously cheaper, and I think he can fill that role there where they don't have Anthony Barr.
Yeah, the Jets had a nice. I mean, on paper they had a good offseason. Now, if you want to tell me that they're the Jets and their destiny to screw it up, I'm not going to disagree with you. But on paper, they had a good offseason.
Yeah, I agree.
On paper, because I mean they had so much cap space, so they had money to pay people, and they did. So.
Yeah, Jamison Crowder, Le'Veon Bell, C.J. Mosley, they made some improvements. So, like I just mentioned, I think the top 3 are pretty set in stone. I think you really start to have a conversation when you get to Oakland at 4. This is one of the more dysfunctional franchises in professional sports right now. They're a disaster. I know they added Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams, but I still think this is a disaster. I think they could go quarterback here and surprise people. I think they could reach and go in a wide range of directions here. Luke, what do you think Oakland will end up doing at 4?
I don't see them taking quarterback at 4. I think they're going to give Carr and Brown a chance to be the future. I don't think they're going to take a quarterback. I think they're just going to. Honestly, it's hard. They're a hard team to predict what they're going to do.
Exactly.
I would say that if I had to guess, I would say they'd go defense. Just a guess.
In my personal mock estimations, I would have them taking Quinnen Williams from Alabama at 4.
I can see that. He'd be a Raiders type of player to me.
I would personally rank Williams ahead of Nick Bosa or Josh Allen. I'm not saying he is going to be as good as Aaron Donald, but I just see that sort of explosive athlete who just doesn't make sense on the defensive line there. I would say that he would be a good fit in Oakland.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay at 5.
I don't think they'd go quarterback. I think for some reason they've made Jameis be their guy. I thought Jameis was better in the second half this year. And this is I'd say this year is probably his last chance.
Yeah.
So I think that with them, I think it's. I think they could take. I think if Williams is there, they would probably take him.
They still have Gerald McCoy, and they took Vita Vea in the top 15 a year ago. So I don't know about them going interior defensive line. There have been a popular pick for them has been Montez Sweat from Mississippi State. But in the last week or two, there have been more rumors about Devin White from LSU ending up in Tampa Bay. I think it's likely going to be one of those two.
I'll say this about Tampa Bay. They need a draft. This needs to be a good draft for them.
Yeah, they've had a lot of iffy first-round picks in recent years.
Got to build that roster up a little bit.
Bruce Arians is a good coach, but you got to give the guy something.
Yeah.
Something to coach.
That's right. Honestly, I forgot that they brought him back out of retirement. That's right.
They have a huge.
I think the guy can coach, though, but you have to give him, like you said. I mean, you can't just give him bums.
Their secondary is extremely lacking. I don't know that there's a guy to target in the secondary at 5. I don't think we will see a single defensive back go in the top 10, so I don't see them going there at 5. But I think this is probably going to be – or you know what they could do? This could be Tampa Bay is an important team to watch, not because of what they'll do. If you're looking at a Denver, a Cincinnati, a Miami, maybe even a Washington from 15, trying to jump ahead of the Giants to get Haskins. Tampa Bay could be an interesting team to watch if they will move down.
Yeah. It's just if they need to have a good draft, there's no question because they had some really shaky drafts where they haven't built their roster in the past couple of years.
So moving on to those said Giants, in the last couple of days, there have been rumors that the Giants covet Duke quarterback Daniel Jones. Do you think there's any truth to this, or do you think it's a smokescreen to dissuade people from trading up with Tampa Bay and getting Haskins ahead of them?
Smokescreen. I think that the Giants. I'm not saying I would take Haskins because I wouldn't, but I think they're going to take Haskins. If I was the Giants, if I was the guy in charge for the Giants, I would wait until 2020 and just have you run it with Eli another year because I think 2020 is a better draft class for quarterbacks. But I think they're going to take Haskins. And they're going to regret it next year when those studs are getting picked.
I could see it going either way. To me, I think it would depend on who's still there. I mean, if we see a Quinnen Williams or a Devin White or somebody like that fall into their laps at 6, if a team jumps ahead of them to get a guy they covet who isn't a quarterback, and one of those blue chip defensive line prospects falls into their laps, I could see them going that route. But I don't see them. And if they don't take a quarterback at 6, I could see them taking one at 17 or using 17 to move up and get somebody. I don't see them leaving Nashville without a quarterback on Thursday night.
Which would be stupid, Noah, because if you don't think it's worth taking your guy at 6, then take a guy next year. You might as well go defense the whole draft. And it's stupid to take the third best quarterback in the draft when you could have the first or second in your mind. That's stupid to me. I just think them taking like Greer at 17.
No, it wouldn't be that. I think at 17, you're still looking at Daniel Jones probably.
I don't think he's to me, I don't think he would be worthy of the 17th pick. I'm low on him. I am. I always have been. I don't know if he's an NFL caliber star quarterback. I don't see it. I would compare him to maybe Andy Dalton.
I personally like Daniel Jones. I like him better than Drew Lock.
I'd rather have Ryan Finley than Daniel Jones.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
It's just something that I just think that Finley is your sleeper. I think that Finley is your. I'm not saying they have completely similar playing styles, but I think as far as a sleeper, I think that you could see Finley be like a guy like Dak Prescott, where no one was talking about him, and someone gets a second or third round steal. That's my opinion on Finley.
We shall see. So going to 7, we won't spend too much time on Jacksonville because this is just expected to be an offensive line pick. Most mock drafts have them going with keeping Florida offensive tackle Jawan Taylor in the state of Florida. Luke, do you have any comments on Jacksonville? Or
you don't think they'd go Lindstrom there? Too high for him?
Yeah, too high. I think Lindstrom is probably going to be the 4th offensive lineman off the board. I think Taylor goes before him. I think Jonah Williams from Alabama goes before him. And I think Andre Dillard from Washington State goes before him. And then I would say
Dillard's a force.
Yes. And then I'd say Lindstrom's probably looking – we'll get to him later. Detroit at 8. What are you thinking there?
I think with Detroit, to me, it's not so much that I don't think they're a lacking talent team. I think they're a couple pieces away. They added Trey Flowers. Their defense isn't bad. Who are they throwing the ball to?
Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay.
Okay, that's what I thought. What would I do? I would think that there's a chance that they take the first receiver off the board.
I think I think you're headed in the right direction. I think this is a landing spot for T.J. Hawkinson, the tight end from Iowa.
Yeah, playmaker off the board. I think that's it right there. I think they need to staff another weapon because I think last year they just didn't have enough weapons to throw to. And didn't have enough guys that got open consistently.
Yeah. Buffalo at 9. I think this is where you could see an Ed Oliver or Rashawn Gary kind of guy. Maybe we haven't really brought up Montez Sweat yet either. I think one of those guys probably ends up in Buffalo at 9.
Yeah, I would say a D-line pick because you're losing Ty Williams. Your secondary is already very good. I would say a D-line pick.
So then now we're getting into the range of quarterbacks. So we brought up quarterbacks with New York at 6. We reached a consensus that is possible but not necessarily likely. Denver at 10. Do you think this has to be a quarterback, doesn't it?
Yes, but it's also hard to predict Elway with quarterbacks. Done a lot of silly stuff over the years. You know, he takes the kid Lynch in the first round, and a couple of years later he's out of the league. They rode Manning forever. Elway's been confused with quarterbacks, but yes, it has to be. And if I had to guess, I would say that they would probably. I have not read any reports upon who they like, but I would think that if Greer's on the board, they would take him.
No, I would disagree. I think Denver's all over Drew Lock.
Lock, yeah, because I don't know. I think, you're probably right about that.
I think
but no, it's hard to sit here. It's hard to sit here and predict that because we don't know who they like. There's no real way of knowing who they like. We can sit here and talk about.
We can play a guessing game all day, but at the end of the day, I think this is definitely something you have to address. I think Drew Lock sort of fits the mold of an Elway quarterback. Big, bulky. He has arm strength. He can throw it downfield. I mean, you look at the guys that Elway has taken chances on and missed in. Paxton Lynch, Brock Osweiler. Those were big, tall quarterbacks who came from spread offenses in college. Drew Lock is that guy. I think Drew Lock is if Drew Lock is going to succeed in the NFL, I think Denver is probably the place it would be.
I'm not really a Lock guy personally.
Me neither.
Either. I think that he's does not get complete enough passes to play at the next level. I think he's not. I'm not high in this draft class at all. It seems like I'm being negative. I'm just not high in this class at all. I think Lock is no different.
I think, like I said, I think if Lock is going to succeed anywhere in the NFL, it'll be in Denver.
I think that honestly, I like some of the guys in this draft that aren't being talked about as much. I like Greer. I'd rather have Greer than Lock. If I was picking, I'd rather have Greer than Lock.
Here's what we can talk about right now. No knowledge of what Denver is planning on doing. If they do indeed draft a quarterback, they have to get that dude some weapons. This is.
How many picks do they have in the like? What are they drafting? Like, do they have how many second round picks do they have?
So Denver they have very traditional. They have 1 pick in each round, and they have 2 5s, and that's it. So they have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7.
Think they're a team you could see trade up and get another pick in the second round and take a playmaker, or trade a second, a third, and a fourth, or second and a player for a first or something. I think they could wheel and deal to try to get a playmaker. I agree with you.
To be fair, they invested in that in the draft a year ago, and maybe a lot of those guys will take jumps as sophomores. They invested in Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton, Troy Fumagalli. They got Royce Freeman. They got a lot out of Philip Lindsay as an undrafted rookie. That was a really young football team a year ago. But regardless of that, I think you need to get something else here.
Yeah, I think that. I think you can. I think there's nothing worse than drafting a quarterback, or in having I know Flacco's going to start most likely, but no matter who it is, you have to have someone to throw to. I mean, Flacco's past his prime. You have to give him a a security valve that he can dump it to because he's not what he was, obviously.
So staying on the realm of quarterbacks, Cincinnati at 11.
I think it's time to move on from Andy Dalton.
But can I ask you a question then?
Yeah.
I'm just curious. You said that you're higher on the quarterback class next year than this year, as pretty much everybody is. So do you think Cincinnati would be better served focusing on the defense and going with the Devin Bush or somebody like that at 11?
When I say it's time to move on from Andy Dalton, I didn't necessarily mean this year. I just think in general it's time to move on. So I think that you could see a team. I think if somehow Quinn Williams falls in their lap, which I don't think he will, I think it could be a Gary. I think it could be a. I don't know. Would that be too high for Dexter Lawrence?
So you're thinking nose tackle?
Yeah, I am.
I could see that.
You would know better than me. Would that be taking Dexter Lawrence too high?
Would it be taking? I don't think that they would go there that high. He is probably the next highest rated with the conversation we've had. He would be the next highest rated defensive tackle on the board. So you're not off. I think they'd be more likely to address the pass rush if Sweat falls into their lap. If Brian Burns from Florida State is there, I think those would be more likely targets. And if not them, I think they'd go linebacker with Burfict gone now.
Yeah, they have a hole there.
Believe it or not, in today's NFL, we have gotten to the 12th pick without even mentioning a team taking a wide receiver. Do you think that changes with Green Bay at 12?
I mean, no, it doesn't. It have to.
I think it does.
Who does Rodgers have?
Right now they've got Devontae Adams, and then after Devontae Adams, the next receivers on their depth chart in order would be Geronimo Allison, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Equanimeous St. Brown. Those would be your top 4 receivers.
I'll tell you something. That's a damn. If they don't address that, that's a damn shame to be wasting such an all-time great quarterback's prime with such little weapons. That's bad for football.
Absolutely. I think it has to be receiver. I don't care if it's Marquise Brown from Oklahoma or DK Metcalf. It has to be receiver. I think Brown is a better fit for this team, especially with Randall Cobb gone. They already have that big physical wide receiver on the outside in Devontae Adams. I think Marquise Brown complements Devontae Adams better. But even if they do go Metcalf, they just need to do something.
No, what about the kid from Iowa State?
Butler, Hakeem Butler.
Yeah.
I don't see him going that high. Maybe Green Bay could target him at 30.
Maybe.
Just
a question. I don't know a lot about the kid. I've just heard his name.
I mean, he's a ridiculous athlete, no doubt there.
Oh, yeah, he's a freak on tape. I watched some of his highlights. He's a freak. Metcalf is, too.
I don't know. I mean, those types of receivers never seem to really translate well to the NFL.
Yeah, they don't.
But that's why I personally would go with Brown. So, Miami at 13. This could be a sneaky quarterback location.
This could be Daniel Jones.
It could be. Because by now we're assuming that Murray, Haskins, and Locke are all off the board. We have Murray in Arizona, Haskins in New York, and Locke in Denver.
But I also think that Miami could be another team that just tanks it with Fitzy this year, Fitzpatrick, and just throws their cards into 2020.
Yeah, they seem to be headed in that direction.
I mean, no, their roster right now would win, I don't know, 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, something like that. I think this is probably actually going to end up being defense.
Yeah, it's the future. This is a project pick to me.
I could see them going secondary here with like a Greedy Williams from LSU, something like that.
Yeah.
You know who had a really bad year last year and it didn't really get talked about that much?
Who?
The Atlanta Falcons, who will be on the clock at 14.
They did have a bad year, kind of for no reason.
I think this is going to be a boring pick. I think this is going to be offensive line.
I could see that.
I think this is probably going to be either Jonah Williams or Andre Dillard. Be my guess.
Yeah.
Washington at 15. I mean, we talked about them a little earlier, and they could blow up the entire draft in one of two ways. They could package picks and move up to get ahead of their division rival Giants and steal Haskins from them. They could move up to 9 or to 8 or 9 with Detroit or Buffalo to jump Denver for Drew Lock. Or they could straight up trade 15 for Josh Rosen. I have a tough time believing that they will walk away from Nashville at this time next week without a new quarterback on their roster.
I mean, I keep saying that these teams, they're going to wait. But they can't all wait because there isn't that many good guys available. You know what I mean? Next year?
Yeah. I don't think Arizona's waiting, and I don't think Denver's waiting. Those are the two I'm convinced are not waiting.
I agree with you. I think the Redskins will leave with a quarterback.
It might not be Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones. It might be, like you've been mentioning, Will Grier or Jarrett Stidham or something, but I think they'll leave with someone.
Jarrett Stidham's stock has risen a little bit.
I'm personally not high on Stidham, to be entirely honest with you.
I think he's an NFL backup.
Yeah, me too.
But no, I will say this, though. I think people are higher on him now than they were last year.
No, that's not true.
I think he's an NFL quarterback.
A year ago, he was being projected as the number 1 quarterback in this draft class.
That's silly.
He had a horrible year this year at Auburn. Auburn had a horrible year, so his stock fell. I mean, Washington, like I said, I feel like they have to target quarterback at some point. I don't know if it'll be at 15, but they have to do something. But, by the way, you got to feel for Alex Smith.
Yeah, career-ended to really no – pretty much career-ending injury to no fault of his own. I feel like he's had probably – I don't even know the right word for this. I don't want to say he's underrated, but undervalued maybe. Yeah, he had a nice career. He had a nice career. I think he was never really appreciated at all. Poor guy.
I mean, at first he was overshadowed by the fact he started his career being the guy who was picked ahead of Aaron Rodgers. Then he finally turns it around and he starts winning a bunch of games in San Francisco. Then he gets hurt and loses his job to Colin Kaepernick. Then he gets traded to Kansas City and he's just labeled as a game manager quarterback in Kansas City, despite making the playoffs 4 times in 5 years in Kansas City. And then he gets run out of town from Mahomes. And then he finally gets a chance to be the established, you're the guy, big contract, and has a career-ending injury.
Is he definitely done?
It seems that way. I can't imagine him ever playing football again. He hasn't been medically ruled out by a doctor, but by most evaluations, he will never play football again.
Sad. You hate to see a guy go out like that.
Yeah.
You want to see a guy go out, on his own terms. You wish that upon any athlete, and he did anything but that, really.
So now that we're through the top 15, we're not going to individually go through the next 17 picks. We're just going to sort of highlight some things that we think could be interesting in the later half of the first round or some potential sleepers in that range. So,
I'll give you a sleeper right now.
Go ahead.
I'll give you a sleeper that the guy that is people aren't talking about him. I'll tell you a guy that can help your football team right away. This is a guy that can play in the NFL for 15 years, and that's Boston College's Zach Allen. those of you that know me, I am very biased. I'm a diehard Boston College football fan, Boston College fan as a whole. But I think, no, doesn't Allen seem like a guy to you that can stick?
Yeah.
Don't you see him as an NFL contributor?
For sure. I think he's probably destined to go late first, early second in that range.
Yeah, he's going to help the football team. I think he'd be a good Patriot. Versatile. The teams, no one likes versatility more than Bill Belichick.
Yeah, for sure. So if we're going the sleeper route here, one guy who I really like in that category is Washington safety Taylor Rapp. He's physical. I mean, Washington defensive players in the last handful of years have been known to come out very physical, tough. They'll hit you in the mouth. He's no different. I could see him. Look at the last couple of safeties who had first round grades, who fell to the top couple picks in the second. Landon Collins coming out of Alabama, and his former Washington teammate Budda Baker, who's now in Arizona. I could see him in that mold. I think Baker, his former teammate, would be a applicable pro comp.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely some Washington grit there. I think that school gets some grinders.
Yeah, for sure. So, Luke, let me ask you this question. Outside of the top 15, which team slotted from 16 to 32 needs to have the biggest draft?
I don't know if they need to have the biggest draft, but they need to have a big draft. Is the Super Bowl champs needed to get playmakers. I mean, I like Philip Dorsett too, but I mean, you want him to be a number 2 target?
No.
You want Demaryius Thomas coming off an Achilles injury? You want to rely on him?
I don't even know if he'll make the team.
team.
Yeah, we said the same thing at the same time.
He is a walk. His contract, the guarantees and the stuff, it's all performance based. So the Patriots are not counting on him to make the team or just be a factor. So they're not counting him to really be a huge contributor. So I think that they need to have a big draft. I think this is a big draft for the Bears and taking their next steps. Time for them to do something.
Yeah.
I think that they need to. This will be a big year for Trubisky and what they sent around him.
Yeah.
That next elevation for him.
They moved on from Jordan Howard too.
Yeah.
So you brought up New England. They have 12 draft picks. Would you encourage them moving from 32 up to get one of the tight ends from Iowa or even Irv Smith from Alabama if they don't think he'll fall to them at 32?
I would not trade up if I was the New England Patriots this year. I would stay pat and Belichick trust himself to use those second and third round picks that he's so good at finding gems with and stay the course and do it that way. I would not trade up and give out your second and third, fourth round picks. I would not do that.
So a team that I would highlight that I think needs this is an important draft for is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, they need that next generation of players.
They do. I still believe that Mike Tomlin is a good coach.
I don't. We've always disagreed with him.
That's just an idiotic take. That's just utterly foolish.
His teams never have any discipline whatsoever. There's always fighting in the locker room. There's always guys not wanting to be there. There's a reason why everybody wants out.
He's won.
It's not a stable locker room. It's not a locker room with any discipline or professionalism. They're a joke of a team. Joke. And there's a reason.
A team that makes the playoffs pretty much every year is a joke of a team?
That did not get to a Super Bowl with the best wide receiver and the best running back in the NFL for 5 years. You didn't make a single Super Bowl appearance.
But he made 2 before they got there. with worse
What?
talent. He made
Okay,
two.
no, that team was handed to him.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it
The
was.
team in 2011 was not handed to him, or in 2009.
I'm talking about 2009.
That team was not handed to him.
2008 was handed to Mike Tomlin.
How so? How
Silver
so?
platter. Here you go, Bob.
How so?
Because there was already those great players on those teams from the what's his face days. What's his face? Bill Cowher. Those teams. He has never been able to build them from the ground up and win a championship. He's won one Super Bowl with Ben Roethlisberger. One.
He's been to two, and he's missed the playoffs, I believe, 2 times in 12 years.
What?
He's been to the playoffs 10 times in 12 years.
Okay, he has one ring. That's with Ben Roethlisberger.
He has one ring, and he's 47 years old.
But Noah, there's a reason why everyone always wants out there.
What do you mean everyone? It was 2 guys.
They're 2 best players.
And neither of them had anything to do with Mike Tomlin.
Well, you gotta blame somebody.
Le'Veon Bell wanted out because they refused to pay him like he should have been, which was on the front office and not Mike Tomlin. And Antonio Brown was being dramatic and seeking attention, and he was upset that Ben Roethlisberger was starting to target Juju Smith-Schuster more than him. Neither of those things have anything to do with Mike Tomlin.
I'm telling you, it starts at the top there. They're not a disciplined team.
You're right, it does, with the general manager.
On and
who
off
refused to pay Le'Veon Bell.
They're on and off the field. They're not a disciplined team. It starts with Mike Tomlin. He's an incompetent coach. Late game, not a guy you want late game making decisions for you. Not a good play caller. Nothing. He's an average.
He's a defensive coordinator.
He's still their head coach. He's an average football coach.
That's just a ridiculous statement.
A little bit above average football coach because I'll give him credit for the playoff appearances. He's a B coach.
So how many A coaches are there in the NFL? 1? How many
There's
coaches in the NFL make the playoffs as much as he does?
There's a lot of coaches in the NFL that I would take over Tomlin. There's a lot.
Who? Go ahead, name them.
I'd rather have Bill Belichick.
Okay.
I'd rather have
who?
Sean McVay. I'd rather have the Bears coach.
Oh, you can't even name.
Oh, I'd rather have. I would rather have Pete Carroll. I would rather have Bruce Arians. I would rather have. That's 5 right there, Noah.
Well, no, they're all wrong except for Belichick.
Oh, I'm telling you, you're
how can you even defend that statement?
You're overrating what he's done continuously, time and time again.
Do you know how hard it is to make the
turmoil in disorganization for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Do you know how hard it is? Do you know how hard it is to make the playoffs as often as he does, especially in a division where he?
There.
What?
It's a sink. That franchise is a sinking ship. It's a joke what they've done and how little they accomplished in the playoffs with such a talented offense. Ridiculous. And they could never figure it out on defense, Noah. They always, against Brady, could not figure it out. They laid back and played this soft zone and were outgained.
That's not a fair standard to hold them to. You can't hold everybody to New England standards.
But no, you shouldn't be beat by the same team over and over and over again.
I'm sorry, who won this year?
What?
I'm sorry, who won that game this year?
Okay, but no, I'm talking about in the playoffs, though. In the playoffs, they've been beaten by the Patriots over and over.
Oh, really? Really? Can I inform you of something? Mike Tomlin has lost. Mike Tomlin has lost to the New England Patriots in the playoffs once.
Okay, no, but
once.
Okay, no. Well, you look up Mike Tomlin's career record against the Patriots.
You can't. Who cares? That's a regular season game.
That's the class of the league, Noah.
So why don't you look up every coach in the NBA and their record against Golden State?
Well, that's the Golden State.
How is that any different?
Because Golden State's literally a glitch. Patriots
How is it
are just
any
built-
different?
No, the Patriots are not in a glitch. They actually build their roster.
The Golden State didn't build their roster?
You look at the Steelers in late games and their ability to close out games and have that consistency within their team. It's not there.
Making the
They've wasted
playoffs
so
as
many
often
good
as they do
players.
seems pretty consistent to me.
They've wasted a
Mike
lot of
Tomlin,
good-
okay, by the way, Mike Tomlin has been the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers since 2007. He has never had a losing record.
Okay, no, because he's had great players.
That he coached!
What?
That he coached to become great players! Antonio Brown was a 6th-round pick. Who was his coach? Mike Tomlin. Le'Veon Bell was a 2nd-round pick. Who was his coach? Mike Tomlin.
But
Juju Smith-Schuster's 2nd-round pick. Mike Tomlin.
no, the guy is a clown. They're never prepared to play good teams. Never. They're a complete joke. They let not last year, the year before. They let Jacksonville. They let the Jacksonville Jaguars walk into their home stadium and beat them because they weren't prepared. They were out-coached and out-schemed, like they always are. And at the end of the game, they're running around with their heads cut off. A lot of talent, not a lot of smarts. That's what they are. That's what they'll always be with Mike Tomlin. Not a winning coach.
Can I ask you one more question?
What?
Can you name one other active head coach in the NFL who has been a head coach for more than a decade who does not have one losing record in their career?
Besides Belichick, I don't think so.
Well, that's also not true.
Oh, what did you say? Did you say losing record in the last 10 years?
No, one guy who's been an NFL coach for at least 10 years who has never had a losing record.
Belichick had a losing season with the Browns, but
Let me give you a hint.
and one with the Patriots in 2000. Anyways, no, I couldn't know. I'm not saying he's a terrible coach. I'm saying that he doesn't maximize the potential of that team. That's all. And he's not good at managing.
The answer to the question is 0.
He gets guys fired up. But he does not have the smarts to be an NFL head coach. A good one. A great one. He's a good coach, not a great coach. He's a B coach.
If the Steelers fired Mike Tomlin tomorrow, I would say 30 out of 32 NFL franchises will try to reach out to him, gauge his interest. You think that if the Steelers fired Mike Tomlin tomorrow, that the Dallas Cowboys, Atlanta Falcons, Oakland Raiders, Tennessee Titans, you don't think any of those teams would want him as their head coach over who they have now?
No, he's a good coach, but he's allowed himself to not be elite. Great.
Ridiculous statement. Any last thoughts on the draft as a whole?
I would say that people are, like I said before, I really said people are sleeping on Zach Allen. Kid is a beast on tape. He can play in and out for you. A lot of versatility the NFL teams seek. I also think people are sleeping on Ryan Finley. I think the kid's a stud. And I think that people are sleeping, help me out with the name. I believe I forget his first name, the running back on Temple. That kid is a force.
Raquel Armstead.
I think that he's like a LeGarrette Blount.
All right.
He's like, no, there's something to be said about a guy that's hard to tackle. That's why I always
for sure.
think.
That's going to do it for the NFL Draft Preview edition of the Faithful Fan Sports Podcast. We hope you enjoyed listening, and stay tuned for more.